Checking the basketball. Tips for using it to your advantage. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
I get live. You gotta give me mine. Stay solid at the top. That's the bottom line. All I see is dollar signs. The best when it comes to mine. Work speak for itself. You don't have to cross that line.
Today we're talking about using checking the ball to your advantage when you're out here at the park. I thought of this video because on opening night of the current 2023 NBA season, there was, I think it was like Nike or Gatorade, some kind of commercial that was showing the players checking the ball back and forth over and over again. And that made me think about how you can use checking the ball to your advantage out here. This channel is all about taking little tips and tricks and hacks over time and then stacking them together so that over time you take the little bits, stack them together, and then you make big improvements over time. So while how you check the ball will not, significantly impact a certain play or game, it will help you over time, I do believe, if you use it correctly in the right circumstances. So let's talk about what checking the ball is and how to use it to the best of your advantage. First of all, for those of you who may not know what checking the ball is, it's pretty much passing the ball back and forth between the offense and defense before every possession begins. So what happens is the team that's taking the ball out of bounds, the offensive team, one of the players will pass the ball to the defense, usually the player that's guarding him, and then that player will pass the ball back to that player, and that's what's called the check. That's called checking the ball back and forth. So usually the offensive player take the ball out of bounds, he'll say check, he'll pass it to his defender, the defender will pass it back to him, and then play can start. That happens every dead ball possession. Now, why do we do this? I don't know. I don't think that anyone necessarily knows. It's some kind of ritual that has taken place over the decade. Like that's happened, my entire lifetime. I'm sure it's been going on out here on basketball courts since at least the 80s. So I don't think anybody actually knows for sure like how and why it started or why it is exactly that we do it. But my assumption is, so I think it's overall to check the status of the game. So for instance, you could check the status of the ball. Is the ball okay? Does it have any scratches or holes in it or something, extraordinary like that? So it's an opportunity for the offense to check the ball, then he passes it to the defense gets to check the ball, they pass the back to him, and play starts. What's more common though, I think, is you're sort of checking the overall status of what's going on the court and trying to make sure that everybody on the court is on the same page. So for example, you'll check the rules. So for example, how many points are we going to be playing to? Are we playing to 11? Are we playing to 15? Are we playing to 21? Is it make it, take it? What's out of bounds? For instance, me and my friends would always play the grass is out of bounds, not the out of bounds lines themselves. So you're checking the status of the game, making sure that both teams are on the same page. This is especially true for checking the score. So what's the score? Do we both agree on what the score of the game is? If not, we have to figure that out in this dead ball situation. So you're using the check, in my assumption, to check sort of the overall status of the game and make sure everybody's on the same page. That being established, now let's talk about the kind of little tips, tricks, and strategies you can use to at least hopefully use the check to your advantage, and so hopefully try to either turn the tide in your favor or turn the tide against your opponent. So first of all, when we're talking about trying to use the check of the ball to your advantage, right, we're talking about momentum and rhythm, trying to manipulate those two. Also, I recommend that as often as possible, you try to be the person that's doing the checking of the ball. Now, if you're on defense, you don't really have any control over that, but offensively, if you can be the person taking the ball out of bounds and checking it, the more often you can do that, the better. That way, the more you have the ball in your hand, the more often you're checking it, the more theoretical control you have over the game. When I think about checking the ball, I usually think of two different distinct kind of checking methods. One is being a normal regular check. I call it like a quick check or like a rhythm check, which is you pass the ball to the defense then passes it back to you in a quick rhythmic way, and then you inbound the ball. So it's kind of like check, back, inbound, right? There's a rhythm there, right? When that happens, that can be a good thing, because that helps to at least theoretically spark a little bit of a rhythm, a little bit of a flow that can be then used throughout at least that particular possession. The fact that it's sort of rhythmic, right? That's what you're trying to create, that rhythm, that flow. The other kind of check is what I kind of call like an awkward check, right? And you make it awkward on purpose, like you're trying to invoke that awkward, weird, uncomfortable feeling. The most common way to go about doing this is, instead of sort of inbounding and passing the ball immediately, you sort of hold it for an extra second, an extra beat. You hold on to it for an extra second to give the intentional feeling around the court of awkwardness and weirdness and uncomfortability. The reason you'd want to do this is because you're trying to use that uncomfortability, that awkwardness, to break momentum, to break a rhythm or a flow. So when we're talking about using the check to manipulate those things, right, it's on you to have a court awareness that's precise enough to understand what's going on and what and how and why you're trying to manipulate things the way you are. So for instance, if you're on offense and you're winning, right, you're theoretically winning because your team's playing well and they're in a good offensive rhythm. So when you're checking the ball, you want that to be rhythmic in order to continue that flow and that rhythm. If you're on offense and you're losing, right, you may want to use a rhythmic quick check to try to spark a little bit of a rhythm, a little bit of a flow. But if you're in a certain situation where like you're on offense and you're losing, and you know it's because like your team it's like they're stalling out and they're stuttering and you guys are not all on the same page, right? You may need some kind of like a psychological reset to try to get you back on the same page. So you would use an awkward kind of check, right, to make your teammates, feel that awkward, uncomfortable, weird feeling, right? You want to do that on purpose so that like you check it in a weird, awkward way, so that your teammates feel like, oh man, like once you inbound the ball, it's like, oh, that was really weird and uncomfortable. Like I didn't like that feeling and that check. Let's, in order to get away from that weird, awkward, uncomfortable feeling, let's, play really well on this given possession. Like let's get into a flow and a rhythm. Anything to get away from that weird, awkward feeling that was created by the check. The same principle kind of applies on defense. The problem is that when you're on defense, because you're defending and you're not controlling the ball, you have less natural control over the game in general. Because you don't have control over the game in general, you now have to sort of react to what the offense is doing. So for instance, if you're on defense and you're checking the ball and you're winning, right, maybe you want to check the ball quickly to continue your defensive your defensive rhythm and flow, because you're playing defense so well as a team, right? You want to have a quick check to keep up that momentum. But you got to keep in mind that if you quick check on defense and you're winning, that could help the offense as well, because the offense has the ball, right? They're losing because you're winning, right? If you quick check the ball to them, that may help them to spark a flow and a rhythm of their own. So you're going to have the awareness of the court of like, will it help your team more to quick check the ball, or will it help the offense more if you quick check the ball? What's most common is if you're on defense and you're losing, right? That's where awkward checking the ball is usually most useful and common. Because if you're on defense and you're losing, right, that means the offense is probably playing pretty well. They're outplaying you. They're probably on more of a page than your defense is. So you want to break up their flow. You want to break up their rhythm, their momentum. So you awkward check the ball to them, hoping that that awkwardness, that uncomfortability, sort of breaks up their flow and their rhythm. A quick word of warning, however, most of the time you want to be doing some version of a quick rhythmic check. The reason for that is the more often you use like a staggered, slow, awkward check, the more often you do that, the more used to that kind of check all the players on the court are going to be. The more used to that kind of check they are, the less impact it's going to have. So you don't want to abuse that slow, staggered, like awkward check too often, because you want to save it for, you know, strategic times in situations in the game when you know it can be used to its fullest potential. So use the quick rhythmic check when you're trying to build and spark flow and momentum. Use the slow, staggered, awkward check when you're trying to break it intentionally. Another general rule for awkward checking the ball is that the later and deeper into a given game you use it, usually the more effective it is. There's not usually a reason to use an awkward check at the beginning of the game, because at the beginning of the game there hasn't been that much flow and momentum built at the beginning. That's sort of what the quick check is used for at the beginning of the game, to try to build and use and establish flow. But as the game goes on, the more the awkward check can become useful, especially when we're talking about very end of the game, when, like, offensively, right, if the offense scores one more point, right, it's the last point of the game. If they score that point, the game is over. Defensively, if you're on defense in that situation, now the longer, the more awkward and uncomfortable you make that check, the better, because you want to disrupt their flow and their rhythm as much as you possibly can. Now keep in mind, this doesn't mean to, like, be a jerk and, like, stand here and hold the ball and, like, you know, antagonize the offense, but it means holding on to the ball for even longer than you would for a normal awkward checking of the ball. Usually be like you hold on to the ball for an extra beat or two, and then you'd pass the ball, check the ball back to the offense. But now in sort of the end game kind of situation, right, now you want to take it a step further. So maybe instead of, like, passing the ball back to the offense, maybe this time you roll it back to them slowly, or maybe you set it on the ground and you kick it to them, you know, slowly, but instead of kicking it right at them, you kick it just to the right or just to the left of them, so they have to, like, take a step and bend down and pick up the ball. Like, it doesn't sound like much, but something psychological like that can actually make a difference, especially at the very end of the game when tensions are high. I know it doesn't sound like much, but this is something that I've used hundreds of times out here throughout my career. And I've done it hundreds of times because to me it has seemed like it has had an actual real impact on the game. And like I say repeatedly on the channel, I wouldn't waste my time wasting your time. I'm not going to tell you to do something or give you advice just because it sounds good or it sounds a certain way. So overall, checking the ball is all about, like, trying to manipulate momentum and flow out here. Like, quick checking to make it better, to enforce a good flow, and then awkward checking to try to break up a flow if so needed. But it's on you to have the awareness and know and recognize which check is most effective in which situation. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, if you think it's going to, you know, make you more aware of the kind of situations you're encountering out here on the park, and how to use those situations to check the ball and use that to your advantage, then please subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you comment down below to let me know what you think. Is there a kind of a situation I forgot to mention and specify about how you can use to check the ball? If you have any questions about that, let me know down in the comments. But before you comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below. When you hit that thanks button, not only will it highlight any comment you make, making it stand out from all the other comments, but that thanks button also directly supports the channel. So anyone who does hit that thanks button, know I definitely, genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share this video, comment like I said. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, I will see you guys next week.
Like breaking down walls, kicking open doors. Do it for the goal. The goal is to get more and do it bigger than before. Till history is made. Talking Hall of Fame, glory in the pain. The future's right now. The game won't be the same. Forever say the name.